Thank you so much, Chamberlain. Good morning, everyone. It's a brand new week with all the promises and potentials that it holds. Let's make the best of it right here on Channels Television. This is Business Morning on Sunrise Daily, and we're doing business for just about 30 minutes. We start from oil prices, where it dipped on Monday after rising for 4 weeks as the prospect of a ceasefire deal in Gaza eased geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, while investors are assessing potential disruption to United States energy supplies from that storm barrel. Let's look at the numbers this morning and see that it's red 0.1%, $86.42. That's what we have for Brent. While for WTI of the United States, where you were looking at that situation with the storm, $82.88, and it's down 0.3%. And we know that, of course, the talks, U.S. ceasefire aimed at ending that 9-month war in Gaza, that's underway and it's affecting prices. Spot closures could bring a temporary halt to crude and liquefied natural gas exports, oil shipments to refineries, and motor fuel deliveries to those plants. Also, investors are watching out the impact of the elections from the United Kingdom. You know, something new happened there. France and Iran last week. All of this will have impact on geopolitics and energy policies. And then we come to Nigeria to look at the Naira, where we see not a very common picture is what we see between NAFEX and NAFEM. Normally they're always on the same direction, but for the close on Friday, that was not the case. We saw that there was a gain on NAFEM. It gained and closed at 1,509.67 from 1,520. That's a whole lot of movement we see there, going from 1,520 to 509. And NAFEX, however, there was a drop right there, a 0.31% drop to close at 1,521 naira 73 kobo. I also learned on the parallel market that there was also a huge gain on the naira at the close of trade on Friday. I know that the central bank has been updating us on Forex inflow. I guess that news has filtered into activities in the market and the value of naira. Of course, we'll hope to see more of that this week as we begin opening the market with 1,509 naira. Well, another good news comes from a recent report compiled by the Financial Institution Trading Center, FITC. It shows that banks in Nigeria recorded a significant drop in losses to financial fraud in the first quarter of this year, as the amount lost in the period declined by 77.62% compared to the previous quarter. The fraud and forgery report indicates that banks lost 468.42 million naira in the first quarter, a substantial decline from the 2.09 billion that was lost in the final quarter of 2023. That's a good one right there. The report cites computer and web fraud, mobile fraud, and POS-related fraud as the top 3 prevalent forms of fraudulent activities, consistent with the trend observed in the previous period. That's for the final quarter of 2023. Now we're continuing our conversation on driving food security in Nigeria. And yes, I know we've been in your face, and also we've been in the face of the Minister of Agriculture for a bit now. We intend to stay there until we get solution. We've been playing this to you. You've been seeing it in the past couple of weeks, almost a month now. I'll just let you read through it. So we had that conversation on Friday with an analyst, Dr. Nia Kishiju, and well, he suggested that the Minister of Agriculture should not take all the blame when it comes to ensuring food security in the country, because most of the resources are under the control of the state and the local government. So today we're looking at the role of the subnationals with Dr. Debo Akonde. Is the executive advisor on agribusiness to the governor of Oyo State. He's also the Director General, Oyo State Agribusiness Development Agency. Dr. Debo, good morning and thank you for your time.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
Great. So we had a conversation on food security, and I'm sure you agree with me that it's a conversation that needs to be had until something changes in the country, because the issue of food insecurity is really glaring us in the face at this time. But our guest on Friday suggests that perhaps one of the reasons we're not seeing active movement, especially about a year since President Bola Tinubu declared the state of emergency on food insecurity, is because the resources are with the states and the states are not collaborating with the federal government. The states control the land, the water resources, and so they have the huge responsibility to ensure there's food security in the country. How would you react to this?
Thank you very much. I think that's a very correct statement that I agree towards, that there is a need to consistently have a collaboration between the federal, the state government and the local government as well. Much more because the state government is the one that have the farmer, state government is the one that have the land, while the federal government basically have control over policy, and law and legislation or what have you. But I think it's also very instructive that for analysts to check what is already ongoing with the state as well. We can't completely say that the subnationals, are not doing much. They need to do much more. That is clear. But then we have a good number of the subnationals that are doing a lot, and I can speak for your state at this particular point in time. What has been done, in terms of support to ensure that the food security in Nigeria, is maintained and sustained. The interesting thing with the state is that it is not just now that we started, engaging, on the area of food security. 5 years ago, we have developed a strategy, that will help us to ensure that we become food sustained and we also become a player in the global food value chain. And that has necessitated, some of the approaches that we have adopted. There is a saying among the agricultural experts, across the whole of Africa, that there is nothing like agricultural transformation without rural infrastructural transformation. I mean, if you produce all the food in this world and you are losing the majority of it to post-harvest, and also you are losing them to inability to transport those food to areas where it needs to be consumed or marketed, and it's a waste of energy and resources. So Oyo State government, over these 5 years, has ensured that they put their money where their mouth is. If you check very well, over 67 to 70% of the road construction that has taken place in Oyo State in the last 5 years happened in the rural area. And this is opening up, our rural area that has the vast land for agricultural production. Beyond this as well, most of the feeder roads, within the state has commenced, construction also to be able to link into the farms where the farmers are producing. Beyond that, we are not, we've developed diverse systems that is complementing what has been the general norms in Nigeria. The general norms in Nigeria is that we've focused strongly on the smallholding way of agriculture, which is good, which is okay. There is nothing wrong in that. But with the increase in population and demand for food globally and even in Nigeria, you need to complement this smallholding system with a more better structured system as well. And for us in our state, we have adopted that as far back as 4 years ago. And what we have done is to start creating an ecosystem and an environment that supports, increased involvement of medium to large investors across the food value chain of agriculture in Oyo State. And what we've been doing is to use our resources to build diverse ecosystem of space for this private sector to survive or to exist. So you find out that With, of course, the popular one is known as the Partial Agribusiness Industrial Hub that we have built, and we have close to around 10 private investors, medium to large, that are within this hub that are now doing crop production and are also processing those products within that particular hub. We've also ensured that some of the critical factors, that impinge against productivity and production of crops within our state, we started overcoming them. So now, in our key areas and our key hubs, you will see seed farms, where we are producing early generation materials, and these early generation materials support productivity and production. For example, we've been using old materials to produce cassava that is giving you maybe 6 tons per hectare. Now this material that we have can give you close to 15 to 20 tons per hectare. This matters a lot. This is not just about cultivating lands, but the materials we are using in terms of production also are critical and very, very important.
All right,
these materials, yes. Yeah.
So while we applaud your state for, these laudable steps you have taken, but I'm sure you agree with me that even with all of this, we still have the threat of food insecurity. That means there's a need for collaboration, not just with the federal government, but even among states. And I do know that commissioners of agriculture from the Southwest met some time ago. Could you tell us what's going on when it comes to the issue of collaboration? As you've noted, you still need the federal government. How do we attract that might, federal might, to help in this area of infrastructural development, so that even though the state controls the land and the farmers, there's a collaboration that gives us food as a country at the end of the day?
I think the federal government needs to continuously use what we refer to as a targeted approach, rather than an approach that you think is applicable to all. We are a country, but we have divergence, in terms of who we are. Our lands are different, our vegetations are different. What is the need in this probably southwest of Nigeria? I mean, completely different, but what is the need in the northeast part of Nigeria, in terms of food production, even though we have some areas that are very similar with all of them. And what do I mean by that? If I limit myself to southwest for now, one of the critical components, of agricultural production in the southern part of southwest of Nigeria is land preparation or land clearing. This is not a major issue in the northern part of Nigeria. I have never, at a point in time, seen, a major intervention around the issue of land clearing in the southwest of Nigeria. I think this is very critical, and this is some of the discussion that the commissioners of agriculture within the region is having as part of their major discussion. There are lands, there are arable lands, there are lands that are good for production, but the cost of clearing it is humongous, And this is some of the areas where I think the federal government can have an intervention, of support states. While probably in the northeast of Nigeria, there will be another major areas that they are interested in, that are very peculiar to them, that needs to be focused on. Among the southwest governors, the commissioners, the discussion also followed how they can ensure that they open expanses of land, beyond the one that is currently being cultivated, and create a system where we have medium to large investors, to invest within the region to support the current effort of the smallholders as well. Part of the discussion also look at the necessity to ensure that we engage in ensuring that we create a system to support the rural area. It's not just to produce on the farm. If I produce on the farm, then what happens? And then the mechanization approach as well is very, very critical. Was about mentioning that one of the approach that has been adopted within Oyo State, and that might be something that will be of a great interest to the southwest, is the subsidization of tractorization by private sector. Not just to go and be buying tractors all over the place by public sector. Some of the things that we do as public sector are not our responsibilities. They are things that private sector should be doing rather than us. So what Oyo State government has done is to say private sector continue to provide support in terms of tractorization, but we will subsidize because of the cost of using a tractor that has gone very high. Lagos State government has an amazing approach that they use in terms of food banks as well. That other states in the southwest can also be feeding into, because you have a higher market in terms of consumption in Lagos, and the purchasing power in Lagos is quite strong, probably compared to the other part of the southwest also. So all this complementarity approach is very much there that we need to look into. Just a couple of days ago, and I will use that as an example, and why it is important to build rural infrastructure. I went and I do that consistently, went to some of our rural space, and on one of the roads that was constructed, I stood there for 2 hours, 10 minutes. And within that 2 hours, 10 minutes, I counted 49 what we call pickups of cassava, 2 hours, 10 minutes, okay? 49 of cassava trucks. This is quite a lot, and this is one entry point, within the state. And because of that, I set out some of my staff to now do a quantification of the numbers of that kind of vehicle that pass through that particular road. Consistently now, for the past 4 days now, we have seen similar figure on average of around 47 every day within just a couple of hours. So for me, this is critical. This is very, very important. And we are going to use that to do an analysis to get the data around the numbers of that kind of materials that is moving within the state, for processing in our state. So, this is critical, it's important, and I think it's an essential area that the state has to be looking into. Again, I've mentioned that the federal government needs to complement this by providing resources to the state to get this done at the right time and on time.
All right, so we need a coordinator for that. So I guess we are back to the Minister of Agriculture if we're going to have federal input. But thank you so much for your time and sharing some of those perspectives and strategies that you're using in Oyo State. Dr. Deba Akonde, Executive Advisor on Agribusiness to the Governor of Oyo State.
Thank you for having me.
Let's take a break. When we come back, another conversation, important ones, awaits you. Welcome back to watching Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. And the ease of doing business is not a general topic and everybody's concern, especially when we look at, how do we buffer some of those consequences of the reforms. And we've seen the president move to give that executive order withholding tax where small businesses are exempted. And that's just one of it. We hope to see the implementation of it. We had that conversation on Friday. I hope you did not miss that. If not, you can always go to our YouTube channel to watch that on Business Incorporated. But now let's take it further with the Director General of the Women Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture in Nigeria. She's the first. And this chamber is a couple of months old, so I'm glad. I think I'll be one of those putting you on TV as the DG, Mrs. Waymi Eribo. Ms. Eribo, good morning, and do I say congratulations to you, first pioneer DG with the new chamber, speaking for the women and all of that.
Thank you, Ini. Good morning. Yes, indeed, congratulations will be good. Thank you.
All right, so now I'll start with you. Switching from being a geologist to speaking for women in business, what a gap. How are you going to cope? What's the plan?
I've been doing this already for a number of years, so the plan is already ongoing. I think it's just been an interesting transition, moving from core oil and gas now into entrepreneurship and really spearheading focus and support for women entrepreneurs. Maybe there's a book that will come out of that eventually. But of course, I started my career in oil and gas and had the opportunity to venture into the development space, where I saw some of the negative effects that women go through. And I think for me, coming into entrepreneurship at that time, I then realized that entrepreneurship is a tool in which we can use to accelerate women's economic empowerment. And really that's since then that I've really just thrown myself behind that. Also run businesses myself as well, but also thrown myself into the support end of women's entrepreneurship and financial inclusion to really just support women, because I believe very strongly that, with money in the hands of women, there's so much that we can do, and data speaks to that already. So I think for me, that's the transition, but it's definitely something I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life.
Yeah, well, I hope you look out for the men too, because these days it seems we have so many voices for the women and the men are being left out. So, let's not risk it, making the men endangered species. So, but at a time like this, we have a lot of chambers of commerce in Lagos State, national, and all of that. And these are not easy times to do business. I spoke to a woman over the weekend who I interviewed a couple of years ago. she had a bakery. So I called her to say, oh, I know you're now a big woman. And she said she opted out of doing business. So it's really not an easy time at this time. But I mean, I'm wondering, what's your plan as the chamber? What are you going to do differently? Because already we have a lot of chambers of commerce and associations and all of that. What's going to be different about you? What's your plan to drive these women's voices in business?
Thank you for that, Ini. I think for us, it was the chamber, this Women Chamber of Commerce has recently evolved out of the Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture. Within that chamber, there was a women's trade group which existed, and this was created in 2005. But I think along the line, you do realize that it's extremely important within the chamber movement to give women the autonomy, to give their voices the autonomy within the chamber movement. And that's really why this chamber was created, to be very specific and curate support for women-owned businesses. The Chamber of Commerce, of course, so the structure is that for every Chamber of Commerce that already exists, we are working with those Chambers of Commerce. So we're not new in a sense, right? So for there are about 71, 72 city-state chambers across the country. And within each Chamber of Commerce, there is a Women Chamber of Commerce in there already. So that's the structure. So we're not necessarily creating something new in a sense. We're just using this as an opportunity to curate strategic and specific support for women-owned businesses. Now, some of the pillars in which we work with within the chamber is really four. There's the capacity building, and you cannot take away the importance of capacity building for women-owned businesses. In fact, for businesses in general. But of course, because the chamber is focused on women, the capacity building that we do will be focused specifically for women and women-owned businesses, right? And capacity building is wide. Capacity building across the skills to actually do business, across financial literacy, across leadership, across mentorship, across really just understanding the business side of things and ensuring that women are able to get curated support for that. There's also the access to finance. We do know that access to finance for women-owned businesses is a major deal. So we're intentionally curating support within that sphere, and really just seeking through the different alternatives of financing that could come to women-owned businesses. So we're looking at grants, we're looking at debts where possible, we're looking at investment, we're looking at equity, right? We're really just thinking through what are the ways in which we can financially support women to be able to grow and scale their businesses within Nigeria. And then, of course, market access. It's one thing to start a business, it's one thing to finance your business, but then you need customers, you need clients. So market access is extremely important to us, and this is one of the ways in which the Chambers of Commerce has been known, for across the world. It's not just, we're looking at market access not just locally, but also internationally as well. The chamber movement is a trusted movement, so across the world we can create market access opportunities for our women entrepreneurs through the Chambers of Commerce across the different countries. So that's one of the different things that we're bringing that not every other women support organization has. We have that leverage. Plus we also have the leverage of NACIMA. And if you've been watching very closely, currently NACIMA has been, spearheading a lot of advocacy and support for businesses across the country. So we also have the leverage of NACIMA. And then, of course, we will continue to put our voices to advocacy and policy dialogues where necessary to ensure that we're able to, advocate for enabling environments for women-owned businesses to thrive. So really, these are the four pillars in which we're currently working with to ensure that we're able to just intentionally curate support for women-owned businesses and give women-owned businesses within the organized private sector a voice, to ensure that we're actually bringing the right resources to them and we're exposing them on the right platforms and, just curating that intentional support for women-owned businesses.
Yeah, so you talked about access to finance. Your experience, I know you were once with a microfinance bank to create some of those packages for finance loan for women and all of that. What are some of the hurdles, to accessing fund? Well, I don't just want to say fund now because, you know what the interest rate is like in Nigeria, but accessing fund and the cost of fund. And how do you hope to, deal with that?
So I wasn't with a microfinance bank, but we partnered with a microfinance bank to create unique products and services for women-owned businesses. And I think I'd like to address this question from two folds. There's the issues from the banks in themselves, right? When a bank sets criteria for accessing loans or financing from them, but the voices on the table that are setting that criteria are not inclusive enough, you begin to find that the criteria that is being set is already excluding a number of people, and those are some of the issues that we saw. If you're asking for criteria for a particular kind of, if you're asking for collateral as criteria, or a particular kind of criteria, which is usually will be land, will be cars, will be, houses, you're already eliminating a number of women because not a lot of women can have those kind of requirements to be able to take those loans. If you're looking through the filling of the forms, the kind of questions that are being asked on the forms, you do realize that these are questions that are already eliminating women-owned businesses or women in general from accessing loans from the bank. So those are some of the issues that we saw and worked with this bank to be able to streamline these services a bit more to ensure that women had a bit more advantage, to be able to access those loans and were comfortable enough to access the financial institution to access the loans. If you look at it from the point of the women themselves, the first thing is the financial literacy. That is a huge gap. Right? There's one thing to understand financing, but especially when it comes to your business, do you understand inventory management? Do you understand bookkeeping? So we saw quite a number of, we saw a huge gap in that area. And then there's also the point of women being very risk averse. They're not, they don't necessarily want to take loans because they don't understand it. And because some of the times you've listened to somebody who's had a bad experience with their loans, there's the fear of, oh, I don't want loans, I don't want anybody to come and take my house or to come and take my, lock my shop up or anything. But it's really because there's no financial literacy. You don't understand that when you're taking loans, the loans must be going into something specifically in your business that has the capacity to bring that money back. Right? So those were some of the issues that we saw. And in curating the products and services that were in partnership with the bank, those are some of the things that we try to address. So in addition to getting the loans, there were incentives for women to take these loans. There were incentives for women to start saving, I think one of it at the time was if you save up to 3 months, it's a particular amount up to 3 months, you then get access to health insurance, right? So we set incentive across the different products. So there was a saving product and a loan product. So those were the things that we were really just thinking about. How do we ensure that as we're creating programs or products and services for women, we're intentional about doing it in such a way that women can have access to whatever it is that you're providing for them.
All right. Sounds like a whole lot you have to think and put together into one package. But you said you're doing this for the rest of your life. So we do wish you the very best, Director General of Women Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture in Nigeria. And thank God I'm a woman, so I can always call on you if I need any of those, any help in those areas.
Anytime.
Thank you, and do enjoy the rest of your day.
You too, Ini. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, now let's do a little bit of the market numbers just to refresh your memory before we get intraday numbers. So that will be at 1 p.m., obviously. All share index for last week was in the red, slightly in the red, 0.04%. I think I'm just glad that we're still holding on to the 100,000 level, even though it's red, because it was really risky, and we're still doing 56 a trillion naira. Activity chart for the week last week was more of red. We see volume value in the red, and then the deals in the green. Banking, of course, we know they were on fire last week. I guess they will still be, because Access Score has gotten approval for its rights issue. So it's going to be very busy at the markets. And banking, there you have it, 3.87% is what they gained at the close of last week. Trade and consumer goods is lagging behind at this time. Industrial goods, 0.22. Insurance, we talked about insurance getting traction, the penny stocks getting attention, and we're seeing some of their full year release and all of that, and I think it's attracting some investors. Oil and gas on fire, just a couple of them, a handful of them. If you're lucky enough to have stocks there, that means you're making some money. I hope it's not temporary, but that's the much we can take. Let's head back to the Sunrise Daily Studios.